All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Chakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles, great millstone, every will. Peace and blessing to the elect of Israel. Shalom. All right, let's get right into it, man. This is really off the fly. You know, the spirit was on me, and I want to get right into it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share this article that I have on the screen. All right. Okay. So it says, brother sent this is, I guess, from the Washington Post. It says European leaders warn coronavirus could lead to the breakup of their union. All right. So we'll just go ahead and play this video for the sake of edification.
Europe supported. Sure. Is Europe supported short-time work? It can mitigate the effects of the recession. It keeps people in work. It enables companies to return to the market with renewed vigor. The Commission will provide loans to those member states that need them to strengthen their short-time work schemes. These schemes now exist and are planned straight across the European Union, so SURE can benefit all member states who want to use it. We can mobilize 100 billion euros to do this.
All right. Now, this next one is actually the spirit, because I was planning on doing another lesson about Russia. All right, because that's also a part of end time prophecies. So you know what? Let me go ahead and get this real quick. And Salakia. Bear with me. Bear with me one moment. Baba Kasha. Okay. Bear with me. All right. Salakia. All right. Salakia, that's the water for that. You know, the water for bearing with me. But yeah, let's go ahead and read on what they have here. All right, it says Berlin, the coronavirus pandemic. All right, let me share the screen. Bear with me, Baba Kasha. All right, it says Berlin, the coronavirus pandemic with its simultaneous health and economic crisis is deepening fault lines within Europe in a way some leaders fear could prove a final reckoning. The cohesion of the European Union which is in the scriptures, and in the scriptures is known as the 10 horns of the beast. All right, the European Union, it says, had been battered by Brexit, bruised by the political fallout from the 2015 migration surge and the 2008 financial crisis, and challenged by rising autocracy in the East that runs contrary to the professed ideals of the European project. Now let's go into that word autocracy. All right. Okay. Autocracy. All right. Autocracy, it says, a system of government by one person with absolute power. A country, state, or society governed by one person with absolute power, domineering rule or control, or boss who shifts between autocracy, persuasion, and consolation. Mid-century, in the sense of autonomy, from Greek autokratia, from autocrates, see autocrat. All right. So basically, it means to have like a dictatorship, you know. You know, as you say, dictatorship, tyranny, monocracy. All right, monocracy. All right, like monarch. All right, totalitarianism, totalitarianism, Slovakia, totalitarianism. All right. So basically, you know, like a person under one rule, if you will. It says by rising autocracy in the East that runs contrary to the professed ideals of the European project. Now, if Europe's leaders cannot chart a more united course, the project lies in what one of its architects described this week as mortal danger. In the early days of the coronavirus outbreak, the response among European Union member states showed that national interests trump more altruistic European ideas. Let's go into that word as well. Altruistic. All right, it says altruistic, showing a disinterested or selfless concern for the well-being of others. Unselfish, that wasn't entirely right. Okay, so it appears to me to be unselfish, you know, unselfish, Shalakia. All right. Okay. Border restrictions were reimposed haphazardly, and Germany and France threw up export bans on medical equipment such as masks and ventilators, even as Italy clamored for assistance. Quick to capitalize were the propaganda machines of Russia and China. Moscow and Beijing have swept in with much trumpeted, if sometimes defective, medical aid, pushing a savior narrative and providing fodder for regions Eurosceptics. All right. And that's actually the spirit because I was planning on doing another lesson about Russia, all right, coming up against America, which is also end times prophecies, you know, and as it says right here, basically Russia trying to pushing a savior narrative. Well, that's in the scriptures about how Russia will be a guide and a cover over many nations, man. All right, and also known in the scriptures as Gog and Magog. All right. Um, EU countries have begun to coordinate their efforts to produce supplies, and they have sent more aid to hard hit Italy than China has. But the past week has seen a re-emergence of a north-south rift over how to handle the economic response. The union is also being pulled east and west, and has Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has used emergency powers to effectively suspend democracy, riding roughshod over Europe's basic principles of the rule of law. Collectively, these tensions could overwhelm the alliance. Right. So that's the point, you know, these tensions, all right, between, you know, everything that's going on politically as well as the coronavirus could overwhelm the alliance, man. All right. And ultimately lead to what? A split. Now, whether it splits because of the coronavirus or not, the European Union, the Nato, all right, and America, they are going to split, man. All right. And ultimately, the NATO and the EU are they're going to turn their back on America, man. All right. And that's prophetic. Okay. It's prophetic. All right. It says collectively, these tensions could overwhelm the alliance. This could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Natalie Tocci, director of the International Affairs Institute in Italy. The reason why coronavirus is such an epochal let me see how to pronounce that. Let's look up this word. Epochal. All right, epochal. Forming or characterizing an epoch making. All right, now let's see what that means. All right, let's see what this word means. It's a lot. Bear with me. An epoch is a period of time of history or a person's life, typically one marked by notable events or particular characteristics. The beginning of a distinctive period in the history of someone or something. All right. So that's really the point, you know. It says early 17th century in the Latin from epocho or epocha, originally in the general sense of a date from which succeeding years are numbered, from modern Latin epocha, from Greek epopke, stoppage, fixed point of time. All right. Yeah, so it basically means like a certain point of time. All right. It says challenge is not that it brought things out of the blue, it touches on all spheres and does so by accentuating dynamics that are already there. It's as if bringing the extreme out of everything. All right, Norbert Röttgen, a German politician jockeying to succeed Chancellor Angela Merkel, likened the continent's infighting to a grueling trench war, as he joined the chorus of voices warning that the EU is in grave peril. All right? Right, because that's biblical prophecy, man. Okay? It says the debate has indeed been bitter. After 9 countries, including Italy and Spain, requested financial support in the form of Corona bonds. Slovakia. Dutch Finance Minister Wopke Hoekstra, if I pronounce that correctly, said Brussels should study why some governments lack the financial wherewithal to fight the crisis on their own. That comment made during a private conference call of EU finance ministers touched off a firestorm, since it sounded to critics as though the Dutch were trying to turn a health crisis whose origins had little to do with the actions of any European government into a fiscal morality play. The remarks were repugnant, said Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa. Either the EU does what needs to be done or it will end, he added. A separate video conference call last week among EU leaders, which was intended to be a fairly brief check-in, spiraled into unusually angry discussion and extended for more than 3 hours. Diplomats familiar with the meeting said the climate seems to reign among heads of state and government, and the lack of European solidarity pose a mortal danger to the European Union. Jacques Delors, a 94-year-old French politician who played a leading role in the creation of the bloc's modern form, warned in a rare statement, the debate has reopened wounds that had just barely scarred over from the 2008 financial crisis, when Germany led Europeans in imposing painful austerity measures on Greece and Italy in exchange for financial assistance. Now, with needs even more acute, some are left wondering if the richer EU countries are not willing to support their struggling neighbors, what's the point of membership at all? Right, and that's a great point. You know, if you're so-called an alliance and you don't want to help someone on the team, you know, what's the point of being on the team? 10 or 20 years from now, we will all remember what happened at this time, like all Germans remember when when the Berlin Wall came down, said Holger Skepmeiding, all right, chief economist for Berenberg Bank. The political impression we create now is decisive. Skepmeiding said, "This is a crisis where people who believe in size can easily gain." The European Commission has gone to pains to point out acts of European solidarity, including how Germany and Luxembourg have taken in coronavirus patients from France and Italy. And it says France has donated a million masks to Italy, while Germany has sent 7 tons of medical gear. It pointed out in a recent fact sheet, the Commission also has a setup of joint stockpile of medical equipment. But with the early reluctance to share supplies and the resounding no from Northern European countries on corona bonds, it has been hard to compete with the television images of China flying in boxes of aid and Russian soldiers convoying into northern Italy. Europe really is going to have to come together and overcome its initial stumbles if it wants to win this battle of narratives, said Noah Barkin, a senior visiting fellow at the German Marshall Fund. It really can't afford to be seen as bickering at a time like this. While that applied during a financial crisis a decade ago, Barkin said it is even more crucial now, given a much more hostile United States and a rising China, which has shown it's going to take full advantage of this crisis to promote its own interests. Another difference from 2008 nationalist, Eurosceptic, and anti-democratic forces have gained ground. In an interview this week with the Spanish newspaper El País, Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said nationalist instincts would grow if Europe is not up to the challenge. Conte no doubt had in mind Italy's far-right league, the country's most popular party. According to Pol's league leader, Matteo Salvini, said that once the virus is defeated, we will have to ask ourselves about the future of the EU. Something like a pandemic can only be addressed in a meaningful way through international cooperation, said Rosa Balfour, director of Carnegie Europe, a Brussels think tank. If the balance tips in a favor of national positions that could kill the EU. Even before the coronavirus, the EU had struggled to hold some of its members in Central Europe to account amid concerns about the rule of law, freedom of the press, the judiciary, and the rights of minorities. Europe's response to Orban's grab for unchecked power this week was characteristically toothless. Hungary's coronavirus bill allows Orban to rule by decree and bypass the National Assembly by declaring a state of emergency with no end date. Half of the EU's member states released a statement condemning the abuse of emergency measures, though they did not single out Hungary by name. Meanwhile, the return to the national borders could be seen as vindication for the continent's national publicists, like Orban said Toki, although there are some signals that European countries might be able to come together or an economic rescue plan, the short-term divisions could have long-term consequences. One emotive issue could be how European countries manage the lifting of restrictions on their populations. It could create enormous resentment, said Francois Heisberg of the International Institute of Strategic Studies, a think tank. You're an Italian and you're considered as a plague bearer by the Germans. This is where the real danger for Europe lies. Right, because basically these other nations over here are talking crap about each other, man. All right. And broader questions of values and ideas will remain. Analysis say with the fundamental assumption that open borders and economies will bring peace and prosperity increasingly in question. Tochi said that although the coronavirus fallout could bring about the demise of the EU, Europe could also emerge stronger. That though would require more than Europe has been able to muster in previous crises, it will demand more than the bare minimum to pull through. All right. So, and it goes into some pictures. But the point is, these other nations, they're, this coronavirus is really making these dudes panic, man. Kind of like when you're in a situation and, you're in a situation and you have someone basically put the blame on another person. Shalom. So kind of like when you're in another situation and you have someone where they want to put the blame on someone, they want to put the blame on someone else, because all of them are really in a hot seat, man. Someone says, oh, we wouldn't have been in this position if you didn't do this, or we wouldn't have been in this position if you didn't do this, that, or you didn't do that. That's kind of what the European Union is going through right now. Salaki, give me a moment, real quick. Okay. So nevertheless, let's go ahead and get the scriptures on it, man. All right, because this is all biblical prophecy. So let's go ahead and start off with the book of Daniel, chapter 2, and go straight to the point. It's Daniel chapter 2, starting at verse 41. It says, whereas thou sawest the feet and toes of the part of the potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay. Right, so this is representing the NATO and the EU. All right, notice how it says that it's the toes and the feet of the image, man. All right, and what's that? That represents the end of your body, man. From head to toe. Okay, so hey, that represents the end of the body. So we're at the end of the other nations ruling, man. All right, and Yahweh Shai is that next thing to come through. He is that great stone that came to break down all those images. Yahweh Shai is coming to break down these nations, man. All right, but right now, pursuant to the lesson. Okay, let's get into it. It's Daniel 2 and verse 42. And as of the toes of the feet were part of iron and a part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Right. And as you can see, you read in the article, some of the nations are asking for help, but the other nations don't want to help them, because some nations are weaker than the others, man. All right. So that leads to what? That leads to schisms in the body, man. Unlike the body of Yahweh Bashim Shai, there's no schism in the body of Yahweh Bashim Shai. Whether one of the parts of the body is weaker or one of the parts of the body is stronger, it all works in unison for the glorification of Yahweh Bashim Shai. Unlike this body, all right, for NATO and the EU, you have weak parts of the body and you have strong parts of the body, but they don't work together, man. All right. So that leads to schisms in the body. It says, verse 43, and whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Right? You have a bunch of different nations over there in Europe. It says, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Right. All right. So the point is, you're going to have one nation that's weaker and one nation that's stronger in the NATO and the EU, man. All right. Which, as we read, it says it's going to lead to, the breakup of these nations, right? Or the alliance, okay? And this is all biblical prophecy, man. All right? So let's go ahead and get it. Go to the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter. Revelation chapter 17, and I'll start at verse I'll start at verse 9. It says, and here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains meaning governments, on the woman which sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7th, and goeth into perdition. Now, this is all talking about the 7 heads, right? Which represent what? The Greeks, the French, the Spanish, all right, the Romans, the British, okay? You have Germania Minor, Germania Major, okay? And I didn't say them in any particular order, but then that 8th head is what? America. Now, America came out of Britain, okay? So that's the part where it talks about, and the beast that was and is not, even he is Slakia. I'm going to read it again. Revelation 17 and 10, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. Right. So the one that is at this time, because when John the Revelator wrote this, he wrote the book of Revelation, if I'm not mistaken, in 96 AD. So the people who were in rulership at that time were the Romans. Okay, that's what it talks about. And 1 is. It was referring to the Roman Empire. It says, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. That was referring to Britain. All right. Verse 11, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7th. So America, say you have, let's just say you have 7 fingers, right? Now, let's say you have 7 fingers, or matter of fact, let me draw it. I think it'd be better if I drew it. Okay. Salakia. I'm just, I'm not an artist, so don't mind my hand. Okay. All right. So basically, this is what it's referring to, You have the 7 heads. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So you got the 7 heads. And out of that 7th head, you had the 8th, which is America. All right. And that 7th head represents the British Empire, man. All right. So as you can see in my drawing, I'm not an artist, but Just for the sake of edification, I drew it. You see, you have 7 heads, and out of that 7th head, you have the 8. That's basically what the scripture is referring to. So out of that 7th head came what? America. America came out of the British Empire, man. All right. Those same Puritans that came over here to the Americas, they were from Britain, man. All right. And when you go back into the history of it, okay, they came over here for religious freedoms and purposes, but really they were a bunch of witches, man. All right. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and keep reading. It says, Revelation 17:10, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come. I'm talking about Britain, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And that's exactly what happened. Britain was in rule for a short space of time. And the beast that was and is not, even he is of the 8th. It's like even he is the 8th and is of the 7th. Talking about America, and goeth into perdition. And America will go into perdition. Perdition meaning destruction. All right. And what's funny is Esau, he's known as the son of perdition, man. Okay. And Esau runs America. Now let's go ahead. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Right. Talking about the establishment of the NATO and the EU together. All right. Which ultimately was established by what? The Treaty of Rome, man. All right. Which goes to show you that reincarnation is a thing, whether it be of nations or people. Okay. Verse 13. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. And these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Right. All right. And that's also another part of end time prophecies. The NATO and the EU, as well as these other nations, they're going to try to fight against Yahweh Shai and the angels when he comes back. Verse 15, here's the point. Or really verse 16, but I'm going to keep reading. Verse 15, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Okay, so these are the nations, primarily of the NATO and the EU, okay? They're going to turn their back on America, man. Verse 17, for the Most High hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled, right? Okay, so the Most High put in their hearts to do so because what? Let's get this scripture real quick. Go to the book of Proverbs 21 and verse 20 and verse 1. It says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord Yahweh, as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. Right, exactly. Proverbs 20 and 24. Man's goings are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? Why? Because there's no such thing as free will, man. The Lord controls everything that goes down. All right. So guess what? The Lord has put it in their spirit to turn their back on each other, man. Okay. To fulfill his word, like we read. Let's keep reading. Okay. Let's go ahead and get some more scriptures on that. Let's go to the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah 51 and 25, it says, behold, I'm against thee, O destroying mountain. And that's exactly what America is. It's a destroying mountain. It's a destroying government because it's established by this beast system. Saith the Lord Yahweh, which destroyeth all the earth. Right. Scriptures talk about how Esau made the earth as a wilderness, It says, and I will stretch out mine hand upon thee and roll thee down from the rocks and will make thee a burnt mountain. How is the Lord going to do that? All right. By way of destroying this place with ICBM nuclear missiles, man. Okay. Now let's go ahead and get some more prophecies about how the Lord is going to break this nation down, man. Okay. Go to the book of, start off with this. Let's go to the book of Job. Job chapter 18. Job chapter 18 and verse 10, it says, the snare is laid for him in the ground and a trap for him in the way. All right. And what is that snare? Okay, let's go ahead and get into that, man. That snare is how the Lord is gonna, like how you use to set up your alliance to make a snare for the other nations. The Lord is gonna use that same snare to snare you up, man. All right. What's also a part of the snare? Okay, the missiles. You use the missiles to have a snare over these other nations, to trap up these other nations to submit to your rule. Okay, but the Lord is going to use those missiles against you to destroy you, man. All right, so let's go into that snare. This is Obadiah chapter 1, starting at verse 7. It says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. Right, all the men of that confederacy, talking about the NATO and the EU. It says, the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread, talking about, their benefits, okay? It says, let's keep reading, Salakia. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee, and there is none understanding in him. And that's going into the 10 horns versus the horde, man. Okay, the NATO and the EU, they're going to turn their back on America, man. All right, that's that snare. Okay, now let's go ahead and get this real quick. This is Jeremiah 51. Jeremiah 51 and verse 7. Okay. It says, Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord Yahweh's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunk of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. All right. Right. Okay. These other nations, they're being influenced by the wine of America and Babylon, but they're starting to wake up and realize America for who they truly are, man. All right. And this coronavirus is only making it worse. Okay, because they're seeking aid and allegiance for the from the other nations, a part of their alliance. But these other nations are like, nah, we ain't trying to do that, man. You should have been handling your resources well. The resources, I'm talking about their riches and their wealth. Nevertheless, this could lead up to the breakup of the NATO and the EU, man. All right, so 2020 definitely is the year of prophecy. As well, you had the Brexit. Okay, so it wasn't even like before the coronavirus, these nations weren't trying to break up, man. All right? Because Esau is selfish, man. All Esau really looks out for is himself. Now, this Jeremiah, Salaki. Go back to Jeremiah chapter 50, starting at verse 12. It says, your mother shall be confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Right, talking about who? Great Britain, man. All right, Great Britain. And how is she going to be ashamed? By way of turning her back on you and sending out them ICBM nuclear missiles, as we read in Revelation 17 and 16, man. All right, your mother shall be confounded. Did it not say that the eighth horn is of the seventh? Meaning what? Going back to my artwork. All right, that eighth horn he was birthed from the seventh, man. All right, your mother shall be confounded. Talking about Great Britain is going to turn their back on America, man. All right, your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Now, what's that going into? That's going into the ICBM nuclear missiles destroying this place, man. All right, let's prove that. Go to the book of Joel, chapter 2. Because that's ultimately how they're going to, turn their back on America, destroy them with ICBM nuclear missiles, man. This is just the runner-up. Joel, chapter 2. And you could really read the whole chapter from the top to verse 10, because that's really going into the missiles. But nevertheless, just to get straight to the point about the hindermost nations. Salakia. Joel chapter 2, going straight to the point. Verse 3. I'll read this again. It says, Jeremiah 50, verse 12, going straight to the point. It says the hindermost of the nation shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Now, what's that talking about? After the missiles pass through, that's what these nations are going to be like: a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Primarily America. All right. Verse 3. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, right? So before the missiles land, the land is as the Garden of Eden. You know, you have civilization. And behind them a desolate wilderness. Yeah, and nothing shall escape them, right? Okay, so behind the missiles is what? A desolate wilderness, like we read in Jeremiah 50. Okay, let's get another one. Go to the book of Isaiah 34. Isaiah 34 and Isaiah 34, starting at verse 5, it says, I'll start at verse 4. Isaiah 34 and 4, and all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, going into that mushroom cloud. And all their hosts shall fall down as the leaf falleth from the vine, and as a falling from a fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, which is Greek for Edom, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. The sword of the Lord Yahweh is filled with blood. It is made fat with the fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord Yahweh hath a sacrifice in Basra, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. And the unicorn shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made with fatness, right? Because the Lord's going to have a sacrifice upon this place, man. You know? For it is the day of the Lord Yahweh's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. And the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, and the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land thereof shall become a burning pitch. All right? Because it's going to be destroyed by those missiles, man. All right? Now let's get another scripture going into how the NATO and the EU is going to turn their back on America. Let's go to Jeremiah 50, starting at verse 23. It says, how is the hammer of the earth, of the whole earth, cut asunder? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? The hammer represents their military force and their military might, man. Okay, America is the hammer of the whole earth. You got over 800 military bases of America amongst all these different nations, man. All right, and all these different nations know that America is the bully of the earth, man. Okay. Verse 24, I have laid a snare for thee, like we read earlier in Obadiah and Job about the snare. I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon. It says, and thou was not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. Right. Going back to the 10 horns versus the whore, man. Verse 25. Notice how this is the sequence, though. Verse 25. The Lord Yahweh hath opened his armory and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation. What is that? The missiles. It says, for this is the work of the Lord Yahweh of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. Talking about what? Babylon, man, so-called America. All right. Come against her from the uttermost border, open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly, let nothing be left of her. Slay all her bullocks and let them go down to the slaughter. Right, like we read in Isaiah 34, all right? Because America is going to be a sacrifice, all right? Scripture talk about the Lord had to sacrifice in Basra, all right? It says, slay all her bullocks, let them go down to the slaughter. Woe unto them, for their day is come, the time of their visitation, man. All right, so America is going to be like a burnt sacrifice, man. All right? The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of the Lord Yahweh, our power, the vengeance of his temple. Verse 29, call together the archers against Babylon. The archers represent the other nations that hold these missiles, because the missiles are known as arrows. What's a code name for a malfunction ICBM or a stolen ICBM nuclear missile? Broken arrow, man. So the arrows represent the missiles, okay? It says, all ye that bend the bow, camp against it round about. Let none thereof escape. Recompense her according to her work, according to all that she hath done unto her. For she hath been proud against the Lord Yahweh and against the Holy One of Israel. Right. And how has America been proud? By way of all her blasphemies, man. Okay. You know, legalizing gay marriage, destroying the Most High's people systematically and blatantly, so on and so forth, man. So this is just biblical prophecy, man. These other nations, they're gonna turn their back on America, man. All right, including the EU. As we read about how the European leaders warned that the coronavirus could lead to the breakup of their union, man. All right, so this is all biblical prophecy, man. And it's beautiful, man. That the Yahweh Shai Shai is using this one virus to bring forth so much prophecy, man. Lord's will, Esau bites on the bait. The Lord said he laid the snare for Esau. Look, he got the bait for you. Esau, bite it, man. And you're gonna bite it, man. However, the Most High has it set up, But by the way of the looks of it, hey, this coronavirus could segue into the end, because what's coming out of this coronavirus? The NATO and the EU, the EU breaking up, which is biblical prophecy. The martial law, the chipping, okay, going into a cashless society. It's also having an economic collapse. Like, this one virus is making this thing segue into many things, man. So you never know how the Lord might have it set up, man. You never know. Now, it's possible that things could go back to normal, but hey, the way it's looking like, man, if Esau, if you don't bite on this, man, really pretending to your elites, man, you will be foolish, because this is a perfect time and a perfect excuse to implement your new world order, and through the Spirit, we believe that they just might, you know what I mean? But nevertheless, we are in these times, man. So with that, I want to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bashim Yahushua, Bashim Kakodash, double honors to elders and apostles of the great millstone, every well. Peace and blessings to the elect of Israel, Shalom, and Abba Babal.